Now, in regard to all this review, everyone has a stake, everyone has a role during the review process. After 2011, as I identified earlier, there were changes to Section 163-3184, which defines and designates the roles of reviewing agencies. In particular, for FDOT, the role that it has in terms of reviewing comprehensive plan amendments for transportation planning is they must focus on what's called transportation resources and facilities of state importance. That means comments during either state coordinated or expedited review from FDOT reviewers must focus on any resource or facility that's considered of state importance. Now, this term is not defined in statute. This was intended not to be defined in statute, but intended for the state agencies themselves to identify what resources were of critical importance to the state. So for FDOT, those resources that are underneath transportation resources and facilities of state importance are defined under procedure number 525-010-101-B. That is the comprehensive plan review procedure I identified earlier. That procedure identifies that those facilities that fall underneath this category for FDOT reviewers are those facilities designated underneath the National Highway System, NHS, the State Highway System, SHS, and the Strategic Intermodal System, or SIS. That means that DOT reviewers can raise comments in regards to impacts to these facilities. Those comments could affect compliance determination on comprehensive plan amendments. That means if a local government does not address a comment addressed to one of these types of facilities, that could warrant a challenge by DEO on that adopted comprehensive plan amendment. I'm going to stop for a second. Does anyone have any questions in regards to transportation resources and facilities of state importance? Because it is technically a new term coming in from 2011.
Janine, this is Gary Sokolow, and yeah, it is a new term. And what I would like to ask you is, who determines which transportation facilities or services are truly of state importance?
Well,
you didn't think I was going to ask you an easy question.
Oh, I knew that.
I can probably help you a bit, if you like.
Go for it, Maria.
Well, when we developed the procedure, we went through a process of working with our partners on that, and internally within FDOT. And the procedure talks about those facilities that are most important. But the statute also directs that for local governments who maintain their concurrency system, they should be addressing the impact of plan amendments, specifically on the strategic intermodal system, which is the highest priority network of the department and of our partners. Those are the facilities that carry the most volume of traffic. So if you're looking at a level of priority, the strategic intermodal system is probably the highest level. But at the national level, the National Highway System also has been defined as having a very higher priority in its function as well. And then the last tier would be those portions of the state highway system that are not either on the national highway system or on the strategic intermodal system, there may be some adverse impacts from the plan amendments that should also be addressed under the plan amendment process. For resources, we had a little bit of a difficulty defining transportation resources, but there we were looking at the state right-of-way, where you may not have actual infrastructure in place yet, but the right-of-way is being protected for future infrastructure. And so there's an opportunity for FDOT to also ask local governments to address the impacts to state rights-of-way. And those are also covered under the procedure.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? If there's no other questions, I'm going to move on. To
I got another question that came in, and that is there has been for those of people that aren't as up to date on it, they wanted to know the status of developments of regional impact. Somebody online said that they heard a rumor they were going away. Could you address that?
That's a trying to figure out the best way of phrasing that, because I guess in essence you could say they are, but they're not. You still have what's called Section 380.06, which guides what qualifies as development of regional impact and how they should be developed. But the review process has been changed. And that's where I was getting at earlier, is the fact that, and this will probably be discussed in more detail when we talk about Chapter 4 in another webinar, but the review process for developments of regional impact has changed, is now underneath the comprehensive plan amendment process with the state coordinated review. And that in the past, there was a set review process underneath Section 380.06. And that allowed, after review, that the local government adopted the development for regional impact by local development order. And now it's adopted in comprehensive plan. So, but to answer the question, it's an odd question. It's not to say it's an odd question. It's a hard question to answer because it's a yes or no. Would you agree, Maria, or am I barking up the wrong tree?
But the answer, that I've heard from you and some people, and I really posed that not so much directly from me, but for the people that might not have been following it as closely since 2011, and that is, between all the exemptions that are in the law and the dense urban land area definition, a lot of the DRIs that we used to have gone into the mode of trying to renegotiate their impacts and renegotiate their mitigation. And
right,
yeah.
And and so I see what you're saying. All right, for existing developments of regional impact, I'll start calling them DRIs. A lot of them are going through what Gary is alluding to, the notice of proposed changes, or NOPCs, to revise themselves. Some have been waiting it out to see what was going on with the DRI program itself. The change that I'm talking about with the review applies to new DRIs. So, and again, that goes back to the yes or no. What also Gary is alluding, talking about is you can call the shrinking of the DRI program, because over the last 5 years, numerous exemptions have popped up for DRIs. There's exemptions tied to what's called dense urban land areas, which we would get into in Chapter 4. And there's also exemptions tied to non-dense urban land areas. And those are more in terms of infill development, downtown revitalization, and things like that. There's also exemptions depending on the type of development, whether it's sports stadium, movie theater, certain types of retail, things like that. And there's certain types of developments within comprehensive plan that would be excluded, like, for example, the rural land stewardship area overlay, which we'll talk about later on in this presentation. Those are exempt from the DRI program. So yes, there's a lot of exemptions that basically force the DRI program into more rural areas, as well as there is now a change in how the process is done. So the DRI program is still around, DRIs are still around, but how the program was back before 2011, it's radically different. And I hope that answers the question, or at least gives some food for thought.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
And I think just following up with what Janine said, so in working with DAO, I think they're working on coming out with some guidance, but basically existing DRIs, they continue to be amended through the existing process if the developer wants to retain his DRI. Now, there are provisions in the statute that they can abandon their DRI, or if they're substantially built out, they can, again, get out of the DRI process. But if they want to retain their DRI development order, existing DRIs, they go through the 380 process, the former process. If it's a type of development that would qualify as a DRI, it's not exempt under DULAs, so exemptions continue. If they're exempt under DULAs, which are the dense urban land areas, or if they're a type of development that's exempt, they don't have to go through the DRI process, and they don't have to go through the new coordinated agency review process. But if it's a new development that meets the thresholds for DRI outside the dense land urban areas, they would have to come in through coordinated agency review. One question that came up routinely was if the development did not need a land use change because the land uses were already in place, even if it was a DRI scale development, would it have to come in through coordinated agency review? And we were somewhat surprised that initially DAO has said that yes, any development that qualifies as a DRI that would have to undergo coordinated agency review, even if the underlying land uses were in place. And again, I want to caution you all that these interpretations, because it's a new provision of statute, could change a bit with time and could be refined. But as long as it wasn't previously exempt from DRI review, it now has to go through this new process that Janine was describing, coordinated agency review. So it's somewhat complicated, as she said, and we'll see how these interpretations change over time.